You ever stop and wonder if your life is just happening to you, or is it something you can actually build piece by piece? Well, today, we're going to dive into a pretty powerful idea: how to move from a life of accident to a life of deliberate design. And let's start by looking at those people who seem to have the blueprint from day one. It all kicks off with this one simple question, and it's almost a little spooky. It's the question that floods your mind whenever you see those old home videos of future superstars. You see them as kids, and you just have to ask, how in the world did they know? How did their parents know what was coming? I mean, you've probably seen it, right? A video of a super young Kylian Mbappe, just impossibly good for his age, dancing around other kids on the field. And the comments section is always the exact same thing. His parents must have known. And it's not just Mbappe. You hear these exact same stories about a young Cristiano Ronaldo, already showing that insane drive and focus. You start to see this pattern emerge. Or maybe you've stumbled upon that footage of a tiny Lewis Hamilton in a go-kart with his dad right there filming everything, documenting the very first chapter of a legendary career. It's almost like the future wasn't a surprise to them at all. So what is going on here? Okay, so one of the big ideas out there is that most of us are just living in the Matrix. And no, we're not talking about Keanu Reeves here. We're talking about a fundamental question. Are you the author of your own story, or are you just a character in a story someone else is writing for you? So in this context, the Matrix is basically a pre-packaged reality. It's a life that's been designed for you by culture, by family expectations, by societal norms. It's a path that's laid out to serve a larger system, but, and this is the key, it doesn't necessarily serve you and your own unique potential. And this is where it gets really interesting. On the one hand, you've got a life by accident. You're living in that matrix. You're just a character, always surprised by the plot twists. You're constantly reacting to what the future throws at you. But a life by design, that's totally different. That's about being an architect. The outcomes aren't a surprise. You expect them because you're the one drawing the blueprints. You're creating the future. So here it is, the real answer to that first question about Mbappe, Ronaldo, and Hamilton. They didn't have a crystal ball. They weren't just predicting the future. No, they were seeing it. And trust me, that is a completely different kind of power. Let me tell you a quick story that just perfectly explains this whole idea. So there was a king, and he had twin sons. When they were only about 2 years old, he pulled one of them aside in private. And he looked that little boy in the eyes and told him, "You will be the next king." That's it. Nobody else heard it. It was a secret. It was a future that was spoken into existence for just one of them. And what was the result? Well, that son lived his entire life in a completely different way. He acted like a future king. He thought like a future king. He carried himself like a future king. So years later, when it was time to choose, the decision was obvious. Sure, his brother was royalty, but he wasn't kingly. The vision had literally shaped the man. And that's the whole point, isn't it? Our lives are just a mirror, reflecting our vision. The son who saw himself as king made kingly choices every single day. Everything you do, and just as important, everything you choose not to do, it's all a direct reflection of the future that you have truly deeply accepted for yourself. Or maybe the future you haven't even dared to see yet. You want a perfect modern-day example? Look at the artist Wizkid. Years ago, he was in the studio, and the producer says their new track is the Jam of Africa. But Wizkid right away corrects him. He says, no, this is the jam of the world, jam of the century. He wasn't just hearing a hit song for one continent, he was seeing a global reality for himself and for his music. That's sight. Okay, so if sight is the secret sauce, how do we get it? How do we develop it? Because it's not just about daydreaming or wishful thinking. It actually requires a foundation of some really essential knowledge. Think of it like a creator's toolkit for building your own reality. According to the source material, this sight is built on 3 huge pillars of knowledge. First, you have to know what you don't know. You have to understand your own ignorance. Why? Because you can't see a new future if you think you already have all the answers. It's about humility. Second, you have to understand love. And not just the romantic kind. We're talking about the love for your craft, for your vision. It's the engine that drives you, but it can also destroy you if it's pointed in the wrong direction. And finally, you have to understand power. If you want to create a new reality, you have to know how influence works, how to navigate it, and how it will absolutely try to change you. Man, this one really hits home. It's all about radical responsibility. The limits of your life, the ceiling on your achievements, it's all determined by what you permit, what you accept, what you allow to take up space in your mind and in your world. And this is just a beautiful way to put it. The real work of creation, it isn't loud, it isn't flashy. Just like conception, it happens silently on the inside. That vision, that decision, that shift in your own identity, that's the quiet work that determines everything that comes after. So let's bring this all home. The goal here isn't to get better at guessing what's around the corner. The goal is to stop predicting entirely and to start creating. To go from being a passenger to being the architect of your own future. You've probably heard this quote before, but it sums up everything we've talked about perfectly. Predicting is passive. You're just an observer. Creating, that's an active act of will. The people we talked about at the beginning, they weren't just lucky. They and the people around them understood this one fundamental truth. And so, this is the question I really want to leave you with. Not what do you wish for, not what do you hope for, but what future have you truly, vividly, undeniably seen for yourself? Because at the end of the day, what you can see is what you can build.